Hello, I'm Christine, and today we're gonna be doing a little writing Q&A. I am working on my fourth book currently. My first two are published, again, but better together. My third one is coming out next year, and I will tell you when. I think really soon. I'm so excited. And fourth one is just in the beginning stages. So like, I've done this a few times now. I feel a little bit more qualified to give advice now, which is so exciting.
How do you write like you're running out of time?
Let's do this. I blow dried my hair and everything. Fine, I blow dried it a week ago, okay? It's fine. It's still fine. It's still blow dried. So if you watched my last writing vlog, you really should watch my writing vlogs if you're not watching them. They're really fun. I talked about how sometimes you meet someone in your real life and an aspect of them or a piece of their personality or something about them inspires a character. As someone who also takes pieces of people they know and incorporates them into their characters, does it ever affect how you see them? Like, I know something you don't know. The answer to this is not really. A lot of times it's someone that I don't know that well and I'm not gonna see again, or if I see them again, it's not gonna be like consistent. It's not like a big deal because I'm not, first of all, it's not like them exactly, and it's just pieces, and that those pieces form their own person, and it's only really, like I was saying in that vlog, like it's only me who knows. Or like if I tell someone that that was inspired by them, like someone close to me. My characters, by the time I've finished a book, have taken on their own life. It's not like I'm thinking about specifics of what inspired what. It's like in these nostalgic moments that I think about like, oh, this person inspired this aspect of them. I'm not harping on it constantly, and I don't think you will either. At the start, you're gonna think about it, but you do a lot of drafts of your book, and it's gonna fall away because your character takes on, again, a mind of their own. It's a new thing, a new person, once you develop that person on paper, because it's not that actual person that you put in your book, it's your version of them, and your version of them is different than them, all right? Even if you're just taking that person, it's different. It's you playing what you think that person is, and that's not what that person is. Everyone is unique. If it's a romantic interest in your life that you're talking about, and you still see them, but you're not like seeing them, that's where I could see this getting weird. You know, I don't think you should worry about this, all right? Everyone is inspired by everyone in their life. No matter if it's conscious or subconscious, pieces of your life slip into your books, and that's what makes your books real and relatable. So it isn't weird. How do you start writing ideas that aren't fully fleshed out? It's the main struggle I've been having with my book. Just start writing. Don't worry about what's not fleshed out yet. It doesn't matter yet, because when you start writing, ideas start to flesh themselves out. It's like a chain, it is a chain reaction. You know, in science with fusion, a chain reaction just keeps going. Once you start rolling, your brain keeps going. Even when you're like, I want to sleep, like it will keep coming up with ideas, and those are the times where you turn on the light. You turn on the fucking light and you write. You do it. You get everything out, and once those ideas start flowing, that's when you can start outlining a little bit, okay? You don't have to like sit down and force yourself to outline, especially if you're not on any sort of deadline, and just write. Enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and get to know your characters through just like writing scenes. And it doesn't have to be a scene that stays in the book, so just free yourself of that. Just write to get to know your character, and ideas will start flowing, especially if you're like starting your book with the premise that you want to start with. And don't worry about fleshing it out, because the flesh will come. The flesh will appear on the body as you go. It'll be like decomposing in reverse. Your book will compose. So if your book was a person, you start with the skeleton, and then like, ew, all the tissues come on after. What am I doing with this metaphor? I'm drunk in the back of the car.
I'm doing the best I can.
Hey Christine, I'm working on a book and have 20,000 words so far. Congrats. When the book is done, what is the first step I should take into the possibility of being published? Now, when you say done, like when you get to the end of your book here, say you get to 100,000 and the book is done, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is just take a break. Take a month away from it, or take at least 2 weeks away from it. And then go back in and do revisions. If you're too close to it, if you have like a critique partner that you can go to, an exchange, and get some notes, like you wanna polish that baby before you step towards querying because you want it to look beautiful for the query, like the best it can be. First step, take a small break, trade with a critique partner, or just take a step away and then reread it. It's gonna be really hard to reread it without edits, but honestly, that is the fastest way to figure out like what you need to change. Take a month away and then just read it. Get the PDF on your iBooks, okay? Do EPUB format. So you force yourself to just read it, take notes on what should be changed. That is the best thing I did. That's the first time I did this was with book 3, and I forced myself not to actually edit as I go, because when you edit as you go, you get caught up in little sections, so you miss some things. Like you miss the big story picture sometimes because you're caught up in a scene for a really long time and you're not catching the flow of the whole book together. What a great pass it was. After I did the second draft, I took Christmas to do the second draft again, and I just read it. I felt so much more in tune with the story and the flow and what was working and what wasn't, and I could see things so much better. I'm doing this from now on. It's such a great, I don't want to say hack because it's so obvious, but when you have the book in front of you, in a Word document, in a Pages document, in a Scrivener, whatever the fuck you write your book in, you will stop and edit maniacally, constantly. Like, oh, I don't like this. Like that's just gonna happen. But if you have a PDF and you're on your phone, there's nothing you can fucking do except highlight and make a note to change it. You are rewriting different scenes really quickly in your head as you read it. You'll see a piece of dialogue that doesn't work and you'll just know that it should be said like this. This was also great. I would just highlight it, make a note, and like write out how I want it written, because my brain in that moment, like knowing how everything's flowing, just like spit out exactly how I want it said. Instead of when you have your doc open, you'll like rewrite it and then you'll keep going through the scene and you'll go from the top of the scene again, and then you'll realize that maybe it's not working. You have to keep reading in a big cycle, whereas you're already in it and you know how it should be said because you haven't stopped and go, stop and go, stop and go, like you do on a page. Is this making sense? It's making sense. I think this makes sense, all right? I've gotten a lot of questions about like, Christine, you're already starting book 4? Book 3's not even out yet. And it's like, I want to be an author and I want to find a reading audience that outgrows my social presence. I have to keep putting out books to find that audience, and I love writing. These past few weeks of not writing, I've felt so confused. And once I get in front of the camera, I'm okay. But like setting up and getting myself ready to get into the front of the camera, I find that so mentally taxing and stressful. Whereas like, once I get in a writing groove, I'm so fucking happy. Like I'm so excited. And I love doing my writing vlogs. Like I don't worry about the filming of those because I just like pop on the camera and it's low stakes, but like this feels high stakes. And the reason it feels high stakes is that past Christine was able to put her all into this all the time, and she's so good at it. And I feel like I'm constantly living up to her, whereas like present me is trying to split my attention on a lot of different projects. And I don't want to let her down. And I don't want to let anyone who watched her down. So I'm constantly just feeling that pressure of living up to myself. It's so fucking weird. And it's like a mental shift every time I go from writing to video content. It's a completely different creative thought process. And I'm so entrenched in the writing creativity process. The disconnect. I've been working to switch to this. I think I'm almost there, but who knows when I'm gonna get book 3 back for copy edits and switch back my brain. It's gonna have to adjust again. I know some stories follow the hero's journey, others follow Save the Cat, and I was wondering if there was a method or a mix or match of method that you preferred. So when I first read this question, I was like, I don't go by any process. But then I thought back to how I start every novel when I'm confused and trying to get to know my characters. And I remembered that I do use a process, and it's called the Catty-tastic 9-block outlining process. I feel like I've mentioned it many times. If you don't know Cat, maybe you've watched my writing vlogs and you see me constantly boxing someone called Cat.
Cattastic, Catty-tastic, Cat from Catty-tastic.
Writing wizard.
I don't even know him. No, you don't know him. I know him.
Outlining queen.
Don't let me down.
I have linked her video a lot in the past in my description, and I'm gonna link it again. Starting the process with her always gets me rolling. Like, you know, I'm a pantser. If you don't know, I'm a pantser. Which means like I don't outline before I write. I need to write first. I start organizing my ideas with Cat. So I put down, like, I use the structure, and then she starts talking about like who, what, where, when, and why, and then I kind of leave the structure and I go to, oh, unless this is her she has 2 videos. They're both very helpful. One is about brainstorming. That might be the one that I'm referencing with who, what, where, when, and why. And then the other one is the outline. They're both fabulous, okay? And they're both like very unintimidating ways to get into your story. Like you don't even realize she's pulling you into it, and then all of a sudden the ideas are just flowing, okay? For book 3, when I needed to put together an outline, I definitely used the 9-block outline I did that with Kat, and it gives you like a very basic outline, but even something basic is super, super helpful. And with book 4, when I was brainstorming, I went to her brainstorming video. So it's like, who is she? What does she want? Why is she doing it? How is she gonna get there? Like, what's her goal? Why does she want this goal? Just asking who, what, where, when, and why about any situation that you have in your head about your book is gonna get all the shit flowing in your brain. Just start writing it down. It seems really simple. When is it happening? Where is it happening? Literally, that's all I needed. What are her dreams? What are her goals? What are her flaws? Like, ask yourself those questions and you shall receive from the creative parts of your brain. How many drafts does it typically take until the book is finished? And relatedly, how do you know the book is finished? My perfectionist brain wants me to never be done. So I was curious how it is for you. Through now 3 times doing this process, I'm pretty solid on an answer here, okay? So for Again But Better, I did 12 drafts. And that is like a lot of drafts, but that's my first novel. And I did 6 drafts before it went out to publishers to hopefully get it and publish it, right? And then there were 6 drafts. You typically get 6 drafts with the publisher, but like they're not 6 full, like do whatever you want drafts. Each draft gets a little less intensive, like you can't change as much. So like the first 3 drafts for the book once it gets to the publisher or when you can make the most big changes. And then the next 3 are smaller changes, so it's less like giant structural changes. When I do a draft though, I like to write the whole draft and then do a whole nother pass. So it's like almost 2 passes per draft. At least you want to at least do 2 passes. But sometimes when you're on a deadline, it's really hard, so you end up doing like 1.5, you know, like things get all over the place. But if it's your first book, take as many drafts as you can. And honestly, I think around 6, you get to a point, like you're asking when do you know that it's done? Comes a point where you can't see it anymore. Like you can't see anything. Like you just feel like you don't know what else there is to do. Once you get to draft 6, like I remember once I got to draft 5, I talked to my agent and I was like, okay, I want this 6th cycle to be my last run through because I feel like it's where I want it to be and I'm becoming blind to what else I need to do to it. You know, like that's the moment. You know. It's time to go. When you're on a publishing schedule, it's different. So for book 2, it was my first time on this schedule. It was my first time not getting 12 drafts. So it was a completely different thing. And when I had to hand it in for the final draft, I still wanted another draft. So I knew that going into book 3, which is why I did my double draft when I had the chance. So I say I handed in my 3rd draft, but really, I feel like I handed in my 4th draft because I did a whole nother turnover draft. Because the 2nd draft sucks. We're gonna go through the drafts. The 1st draft, you finish it, feels amazing, you did it, all right? You give it to your editor, to your critique partner, amazing, all right? The 2nd draft, you have those notes, but you don't remember your own draft. Like, you only wrote it once, and maybe you went through it another time, but like, it was all so fast, and like, it all just like bumbled on top of each other, so you don't know it, all right? You have to become best friends with your draft, and that comes through doing draft 2 and going through it 2 more times, and then that's when you start to realize like, oh, maybe like this event needs to come up to the front. Maybe this event in the front would be better if it wasn't there. But like that's when those things start to happen because the first time you're too preoccupied just familiarizing yourself with everything that's in it. 3rd draft, amazing. Like you make the amazing changes. 4th draft, you're like looking at your 3rd draft, tweaking, making sure like everything shines, beautiful. 5th draft is like, okay, are there any typos up in this bitch? 6th draft is like final run-throughs. Everything looks pretty. Oh, maybe the sentence is ugly. Let's delete it. Like maybe we need another sentence right here. Let's insert one. It's just little final touches. And each of these drafts, 2 run-throughs. But yeah, so when you're with a publisher, you get about 6 drafts. And I highly recommend sneaking in that like reread draft somewhere. My original goal for when I'm going into a draft that is like on a publishing schedule from the very beginning is to make my first draft my second draft. But it's so hard to do that because first drafts are so fucking hard to pull out of yourself. So the deadline's probably gonna come around and you're gonna be finishing the book. Like you can't count on yourself getting through the book more than once. Like 4 passes, hard to schedule yourself because you naturally, at least me, I'm a procrastinator like brain-wise. If I know that I have this amount of time, it's really hard for me to like buckle down because when I work like a troll. So when I start, I need to like know that I'm gonna be okay to troll all the way to the end. And if I have like 6 months, I'm not gonna be like, oh, let me start my book and like troll for 6 months straight. I'm gonna be like, oh, I've got 2 months left. I can troll for 60 days. I can handle that. But like 180 days of troll? I'm gonna die. So you need to figure out your writing cycle. Where was I with this question? What was it? Sneak in your PDF draft, okay? Wherever you can, read your book. You wanna do it before you get to your official 3rd draft. If you're on a publishing schedule, and if you're on a regular schedule, give yourself 6 drafts. 6 drafts. You're gonna need someone else's opinion by then. Something intrinsic happens and you can't do anymore. You're like, I'm perfect with this now. I need an outside input if I'm going to make any more changes. And the good thing is when you're on a publishing schedule, you're getting that outside input from your editor. Get yourself a writing critique partner, find one somewhere online. There's lots of different ways to find one. If you don't have a friend, input, it gets more and more important as you get closer to the end draft, because you can't see as much because you've read through it so many times. I'd say like you're at peak clear story when you're doing drafts 3 and 4. So I got this question a couple times. I'm having a hard time deciding whether to try and self-publish my book versus getting up the courage to get it published traditionally, especially since I'm worried about editors wanting to remove things I think are important. How did you decide to publish again but better, knowing that someone might try to change something about the book you love? And the other question I got said, did you have to make major changes to the book that you didn't want to? I feel like this is kind of an irrational fear and you shouldn't go into it being like they're going to change things, and rather go into it looking at what self-publishing entails versus what publishing with a publisher entails in terms of like the process, rather than like, oh, my book's gonna change. Because when you go on submission, if the editor wants your book, a lot of times you get to talk to them and they tell you about their vision for the book. And if there is something really important to you about the book that you want to stay in there, you can talk about it with them. And like, it's a give and take here because they're just trying to make your book the best it can be. So you have to be open-minded to like different ideas, but the ideas aren't usually like, let me change the entire core of what makes the book the book. You know, if there's stuff that's important to you, write down those 3 things that are the most important, and like you could stick to your guns on those. And if the editor really doesn't like those things that you're sticking to your guns to, maybe you don't want to go with them, but you have to weigh out, like, do you want to do the self-publishing route? Because it's a lot of work just on you. And so you have to like do a lot of research there. Like, it can be really, really great. And we've seen it be really, really great for different people, but you just have to read up on it, see if it's for you. If you do want to publish traditionally, because that was always just a dream of mine. So that's why I tried to shoot for that goal. I didn't have to change any big things for Again But Better. It was all like small plot points. The one note that I remember like attempting to do was bringing up the midpoint so it's like closer to the front of the book. And I worked my fucking hardest to try and make that happen, and I shuffled it around and I didn't like how the book flowed anymore. And I talked to my editor about it, and then it went back to the way I had it before. It started the way it started and ended the way it ended. If you read it, you know. The editor is not out to get you. They are out to help sell your book. So when they're giving you feedback, It's not to like fuck up your story. It's to make it better and work with you. It's a collaboration, not like a bulldozer. It's not a bulldozer. So this is a collaborative effort where you're the captain of the story power, okay? Everyone is working with you to make it the best it can be, but you ultimately make the creative decisions because you know the story the best. So you got to take that input and like address the core of what they're saying. Because if they're saying something that you disagree with, maybe what they're saying to change is not the only way to change it. Okay, and since you know the book so well, you take that note, you sit with it for like 48 hours a week, all right? And figure out why they're saying that note. What is it that's prompting it? And see, because you know the story so well, you might be able to figure out another way to make their note a reality without changing that one thing that they think is causing the note to appear. Do you see what I'm saying? When you have a story, there are lots of ways to shift things around to maybe make things move faster or like make a character less prominent. And you doesn't necessarily have to be taking out a particular scene. It could be changing the way the scene goes, changing the way the character acts in the scene, or like shifting that character to a different part of the book. God fucking damn it. Why can't I think of a good example right now? There are many, many times where I've gotten a note and I'm like, okay, I can't change this the way that they're saying because that doesn't work for the rest of the book. Like it needs to be here for that foreshadowing moment. But I can change X, Y, or Z to incorporate the note. There are other ways to incorporate the notes. But you know, if you've written, you know, if you've gotten notes before, you know that like sometimes you get a note and you're like, okay, I see why they're saying this. But like the way that they're suggesting to change it won't work for the story. All right? But you're like, they have a point with the note because their note is addressing this issue. And I'm gonna figure out how to change it in a way that I like, that addresses the issue, but not necessarily use their suggestion. You know, it's collaborative. It's not a bulldozer situation, okay? So I think you should like kind of set that worry aside and address the publishing process, the pros and cons, like read some articles about self-publishing versus traditional publishing, like see what fits you better in terms of like process and workload and all of that. How do you choose what book idea to work on? I'm having such a hard time overthinking marketability, questioning what idea I would have the most fun writing. Nothing stands out as the perfect idea, so I don't know how to choose. And then I got another question that was like, do you get bored of your book like halfway through writing it? These questions go together. So don't think about marketability when you're trying to like write your book. Write the book you're obsessed with. That's what you gotta do. Don't take anything else into consideration except what you're obsessed with. The story that you want to write, the story that's going to make you giddy as fuck. That is what you're going to complete without getting bored. That is what's going to be good because you're so into it. Like you want to be so into your book that there's no way you cannot finish it, all right? When there's ideas and nothing's standing out to you, I don't think you've got your idea yet. So if there's an idea that maybe is on the road to your idea, maybe do the catty-tastic brainstorm video with it and see if other things start to spark in your brain that make it feel like the perfect idea. Like I know an idea when it's perfect. Like my book 4 idea, when it hit me, like I made a little reel last year, like that knocking on the door reel. Because I was so overtaken with it. I'm still so fucking excited to go back into that book, even though I'm on a break right now. I can't wait to write the rest of that book. I'm obsessed, okay? The same with book 3. Don't let yourself get caught up with marketability. I've made this mistake now with book 2, not with like the idea. I really wanted to write this idea. Don't get me wrong, I fucking love that book, but I was so stressed writing it because I was thinking about all of the critical feedback I'd gotten from Again But Better and like obsessing over pleasing those people. I was so angsty and stressed. I got another question about differentiating your characters and like obsessing over making your characters different from each other. Like stop doing that. What I do is pick the core drive, the core belief that your character has in themselves that they have to move past, all right? And then you build the character out from that core want, need, belief, flaw. And those are different in every single one of my characters. With Better Together, I went out of my way to make these characters so flawed and so intensely different from me, and they still haven't found their audience. I knew while I was writing it, I was like, I know that some of my audience will be able to relate deeply and give these characters the patience they need to grow, but I also know that they're not gonna relate the same way that they relate to Shane, like the majority of y'all, because these characters don't relate to me in that same way, that same like intrinsic, I know that you've gone through something like this way. And I knew that, I was like, how are they gonna find that broader audience? I don't know, because I'm trying to please these people that said that Shane was too much like me and not writing the characters that like I intensely relate to on like a molecular level to please other people. But this is why Better Together hasn't found an expanded audience, because the people who started reading it, like the people who trickle it out, are like my audience. And if my audience, not enough of my audience is like relating to these characters, because I'm not relating as hard in the same way to these characters, it's not gonna expand out, and then the book's not going to find its audience. It's just like, it's a ripple effect. So write the characters you're in love with. Your readers are in love with your characters for a reason. They're relating to them for a reason. And that book's gonna find its audience, and you're gonna have the best time writing it. Once I threw that mindset out for book 3, I'm now obsessed with everything that I'm writing again. Like with book 2, I was like stressed with everything I'm writing. Like I'm so proud of myself for doing that book, because I feel like I really stepped outside of my comfort zone in a lot of different ways, and that was great, challenging myself in those ways. But I did it at the expense of myself. Like if you're obsessed with every aspect of your book, you know that someone else is gonna feel that way about your book. If the book is hitting home like on a joyous molecular level with you, it's gonna hit home on a joyous molecular level with someone else. And if you're stressed out writing your book trying to please other people, the book is not gonna please everyone, all right? Please yourself and the rest will follow. My poor middle child, Better Together. I'm so sorry. You're great. In conclusion, write the story you're obsessed with. I'm obsessed with my 3rd book. I remember when I pitched it to my editor, I had the barest of outlines, and she was like, you know what? I'm excited because you're so excited. I was like, I am. I'm like, I'm so excited. I love that book with so much. It's so hard. Now, people have been asking me like what my favorite book is, and it's like, well, Again But Better is my baby, and I love her so much. She's my firstborn, and like she'll forever be my pride and joy. But like I love book 3, and I'm obsessed with it, and I'm obsessed with book 4. And poor Better Together is like my angst middle child. I was like figuring out who I was as a writer, figuring out who I am when I'm not like a full-time YouTuber, figuring out how to take critique without losing myself in the process. All this shit. Like stop worrying about people thinking your character are too similar to each other. Just let them be. Create them and let them be someone that you intrinsically relate to and that brings you joy writing, like going on the journey with them, okay? Thank you so much for watching. If you're not aware yet, my books are called Again But Better and Better Together. They are 2 completely separate stories. If you want to read them, I'm going to leave links in the description below so you can check them out. I am @XTeenMay on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. I make videos I'm trying to make videos every Sunday, but when I'm on deadline, there are some breaks. But I'd really appreciate you hitting the like button if you like this video, commenting if you have any thoughts on any of my thoughts. I'm Christine. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.